Hi, everyone. Welcome to our daily devotion reading for February 21st. We continue reading Mark's story, but if you paid a little bit of attention here, you saw that we skipped over a couple verses from yesterday. Yesterday ended at verse 15. Today picks up at verse 19. What happens in those missing three verses is Jesus finding Peter and Andrew fishing by the sea and calls them out to he uses the metaphor to fish for people, which I've always loved that metaphor. And there's one comedian that I really like, and he has a great bit about that metaphor, that it only works for fishing. It couldn't work for bricklaying, right? I will make you lay bricks for people. Or it wouldn't work for bakers. I will make you bake people. Nah, it doesn't work that way either. It only works for fishing. This idea that we are somewhere where we kind of work in the environment that we're in, but we're not where we're supposed to be. And so somebody will come along and take us from this place to somewhere else. And so that's what happened in the missing verses. We pick up now in verse 19 that Jesus, as right after he found Simon Peter and Andrew, Jesus saw James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John, who were in their boat mending the nets. Immediately he called them, and they left their father Zebedee in the boat with the hired men and followed him. And that's where we're going to end today. Now, I love the image of Peter and Andrew were fishing by the shore, which meant, like we see down by the river, they were just two guys standing there with a fishing line trying to pull in enough food to eat. James and John apparently were very wealthy. They had a boat. They had multiple nets that they could mend when they broke. And their father Zebedee was even left with the hired men. So the image that we have of the disciples is always a little odd. Most of the time, my image is colored by Da Vinci's painting of the 13 people all on one side of the table because they never figured out what the other side of the table was for, right? And they're all old people. And that's not at all what's going on. Most of these disciples were, at best, teenagers. They were younger people that were doing life work. They were starting to get a life of their own, starting to be able to do the jobs that would actually help out. And then Jesus calls them out of that into his world, into his job. And if you think about the idea of the teenager revolting against everything and revolting because they smell bad, right? If you think about that world, we see that all the time, right? Teenagers rebelling against whatever their parents think is right or appropriate, whatever they're taught, because they want to experience the world in different ways. They have different perspectives. They have different experiences than what you or I may have had when we were teenagers. And so this teenage rebellion thing it's so common to be a trope, right? Well, that's what we're seeing here, is we're seeing Peter and Andrew, and then James and John being so tired and upset with the way that the world is. And the way that the world is was very unfair to people at the lower end of society, right? I read somewhere that fishing in the Sea of Galilee was taxed 100%, right? So that every single fish that they caught out of the sea, they had to give over to the Roman representatives. And then they could buy back any of the fish that they wanted to eat, right? That they wanted for their family. You had to buy it back after you did the work for it. Okay, so it's crazy how disparate the world was between the wealthy people and the poor workers. And part of that is because where the Sea of Galilee is, right? You had all these little towns like Galilee and Capernaum, but up on the north side, you had Caesarea Philippi, which is where the Roman emperor had a summer house. And so everything funneled up to the emperor's house, and everybody around these villages was really just kept in a constant state of need and poverty. And so you have these teenagers that have to work in this world, and then Jesus comes along and says, I have a vision of a new world, something better for you and for your family. Do you want to join me in this? And the teenagers will say yes. Zebedee stays with the hired men in the boat, right? He's not ready to turn over to the new world yet, but his sons are. And we'll see more of the disciples as they make that choice, and we'll see other people as they refuse to make that choice. You and I claimed in our baptism to live into this Jesus-shaped world. We have to be constantly checking ourselves and looking at ourselves and the way we operate in the world to make sure that we are operating in Jesus's ways, even as we live in the world, right? Jesus never called for an overthrow of the government. Jesus called for individuals, for you and me, to live into the world, but to live into his ways. And so we'll struggle with that. And as we read through Mark's gospel, Mark is going to tell us more and more about that. Remember, he's writing to Roman Christians that are fearing for their lives because it's illegal to be a Christian on pain of death, right? We don't have to worry about that. We have it considerably easier than that, right? Mark is writing to these Roman Christians about how to live in Jesus' way while you're walking through a world that doesn't act like Jesus. And so we'll read more about that as we continue. Let's close in prayer. Ever-present Christ, give us the courage to work in the space between the world as it is and the world as it will be under the reign of your love. Amen. God bless you today.